I mostly do a lot of behind the scenes type stuff, help our director just keep the place up and running. I just graduated from UNLV this past semester in the spring with my master's in English.
Woo!
So I am very well aware of all of the struggles of writing at grad level work since I did a master's thesis too. So very much in it and very familiar. Anyways, today's workshop is about overcoming writer's block and perfectionistic tendencies, since perfectionistic tendencies tend to be a pretty big issue or related to writer's block, maybe in more ways than we can imagine. So, with that being said, in this workshop, we're going to be doing a couple of different hands on writing activities to help you get a sense of different strategies that can help with writer's block and also get practice using them. So, hopefully, you can kind of build a little bit of a toolbox for future use when writer's block does come up again. Maybe you can draw on some of these and that can help you get through it. So, overall, we're going to discuss some reasons for writer's block. We're also going to define imposter syndrome and then examine the relationship between writer's block, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. We're also then going to identify some strategies for how you can make time to write and maintain focus as you write, and also just generally how you can work through writer's block and overcome that sense of perfectionism. So, maybe this looks familiar in terms of feelings about writing or when you're writing, and that's because it's writing is super, super hard. So these feelings, this difficulty with writing happens to most writers at some point because writing is really difficult and a complex task, as we all know. It's so much more than just fingers on a keyboard or pen on a paper. It's reflecting on your interests, your experiences, conversations, classroom learning. It's reading about different topics. It's creating questions and conducting research to answer those questions, talking with others to work through your ideas, translating the thoughts in your head onto the page, also identifying your audience's needs and determining how to best communicate to them, taking breaks that let you step away and come back to your writing with fresh eyes, making outlines, notes, and drafts, and then also revising, editing, proofreading, polishing. There's so many aspects to writing that maybe we're super used to, but that we don't think about that can be super impactful and make it really, really difficult. So, with all of that being said, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about writer's block and how it relates to all of that and how it's caused. So, writing anxiety and writer's block are terms for all kinds of mainly negative feelings about writing. These feelings may not exist all of the time or every single time you sit down to write, but basically, writer's anxiety and writing block are situational and just generally deal with any sort of, as you know, blockage, anything that makes you feel like you can't think of anything or struggling to write, struggling to come up with anything, things like that. So it's important to note that because these feelings are situational, they don't describe psychological attributes. You can be anxious, but also you can have writing anxiety, and those are two different things. People aren't born anxious writers, but they can become anxious or blocked through negative or difficult experiences with writing. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about how that manifests and how you can work over that. So, with that being said, a lot of writer's block can come down to, especially in grad students, something called imposter syndrome, which you may or may not be familiar with, but I remember I heard that term thrown around a lot. So, basically, it's the fact that many graduate students feel that they don't belong, or maybe they don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the qualifications needed to do the work. And that can be really kind of a big obstacle in terms of feeling like you have the ability to push forward. So, imposter syndrome, more specifically speaking, or a better definition, is that it's a pervasive feeling of self doubt, insecurity, or fraudulence, despite often overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It strikes smart, successful individuals like yourselves, and it often rears its head after an especially notable accomplishment, like admission to a prestigious university, public acclaim, winning an award, or earning a promotion. So, one reason that graduate students in particular will suffer from imposter syndrome is because they're just starting out work in their field. You all are constantly surrounded by higher level professionals who are your mentors and who have worked in the field for decades and have a lot more experience and knowledge. And so, when you're first coming into that and trying to prove yourself and doing all of these huge writing tasks and things, that you've maybe never done before, it can feel really overwhelming and can make you feel like maybe you don't belong, or maybe you're not able to live up to that standard, which is all totally normal stuff. But just being aware of it and understanding it is the first step in helping us figure out how to work through it. So Anne Lamott has this quote that says, "Perfectionism will keep you cramped and insane your whole life, and it is the main obstacle between you and a shitty first draft." So I don't know if we're familiar with that phrase, shitty first draft, but it's kind of like it's a little thing where a lot of people feel worried to just get that writing down on the page, and that alone can be a big cause of writer's block. You're really scared to produce something that might be bad or awful, that you think is bad or awful. You don't want it to reflect on your skills or your qualities or who you are as a student. And just getting over that alone can be something really difficult, especially when you're working with really high level intense writing, like a PhD dissertation or a master's thesis, or even an article that you're going to publish. So when I was writing my master's thesis and I was freaking out about it because I had never written something that long, and it felt like at the time this is like the pinnacle of my academic career, and it's supposed to be the thing that proves that I'm supposed to be here and that I'm smart and I've done all this research and I can articulate it and make an argument and successfully defend it. And I was getting very much in my own head about it. And so one of the people on my committee told me that one of her professors, back when she was writing her PhD dissertation, told her that if she were to conceptualize her dissertation, or in my case, my thesis, with everything that I would ever write in, my life on a whiteboard, the dissertation or my thesis would be the size of a postage stamp. So basically, within the huge span of things, this one big project that you're working on, or maybe it's a seminar paper or just whatever you're working on right now, is so small in the scope of every single thing that you're going to write. Um, and so hopefully that kind of mindset can help take some sort of pressure off. Because, yes, although we want everything we write to be fantastic and really good, we're all at a stage where we're still learning, and we're still going to be learning throughout the entirety of our career. So these things aren't make or break. They aren't fully 100% reflective of who we are as writers, as students, as researchers, and it's not reflective of how we're going to develop and all of this learning and all of these skills that we still have to do and gain. So basically, we can use our time wisely now to make our work as good as possible, but it's really important to understand that your abilities are not yet at their peak, and that's okay because they're not supposed to be. And that's why you're in grad school, because you're learning, and through all of these projects, you're developing and gaining these skills. So some common feelings of imposter syndrome that might relate to this or might make us feel scared to even get a shitty first draft down are feelings that maybe we're a fraud or we don't belong, we got lucky to be here, or even that we downplay our own achievements. But the most important thing to remember is that you all do belong, and you just got to push past these feelings, because all of this that you're doing is your research and it's becoming your area of expertise. And by the end, you might even know more than your advisor will. So just think about these things, keep them in mind when you have these negative feelings that are starting to come up and might be enveloping you. So you might have had some days, maybe over the summer when working on this, whatever big project you're doing, or even over the course of the semester so far, where you thought, I could do A, B, or C on my project, but it'll be better to wait for the boot camp to get started. That's definitely something that I do. I'm a big procrastinator for fear of I definitely want to put off like, oh, I'll just wait for the perfect scenario when I have this thing set to write. But if you are waiting for that perfect time of day, perfect location, perfect mood, or perfect sources, you're going to keep pushing the work off. So hopefully you can get a little bit of work done here today now that we're sitting down and doing it. But that perfect situation is never going to happen. It's never going to be there. And so waiting for that can also contribute to that sense of writer's block or sense of perfectionism, that you can only produce good work or really great work if you have these A, B, C perfect things set, which is not the case. So anyways, we are going to now establish some strategies to help you alleviate maybe waiting for these certain forms of perfectionism. So with all that being said, all of these things that we've talked about are not necessarily the only causes of writer's block. It's not just this feeling of imposter syndrome or just this feeling of wanting to, have some sort of perfectionism that's stopping us. There can be so many other things that are involved, such as your own inner critic or past criticism. So maybe you have really high expectations or standards for yourself that you feel like you're not, living up to, or maybe other people have told you things in the past that are still lingering and that you still feel about yourself. And that can make you get a sense of writer's block and make it difficult to get started. You might also just generally feel failure or rejection or not know if you are able to achieve success or even what that success would look like. Or you just hold really high expectations or perceive that there are really high expectations that might not necessarily be realistic or accurate to the situation. You might also just feel burnt out or distracted because you've got a lot of other things going on. Or maybe there are some outside influences that are causing you to have low energy in general, like diet, hydration, exercise, or sleep. You might also be writing in a new form. So you usually only write one PhD dissertation or only one master's thesis. And since those are really specific, really particular forms, and really particular genres with their own expectations, even just the fact that you're writing in that can be really daunting and can make it scary to get started. Also, the same goes for if you're writing with difficult or new subject matter that you're unfamiliar with, and a lot of your writing process is dedicated to doing research on that and just trying to understand that at a base level before you even write about it. You also might feel like you have too much or not enough to say. So there's pressure either to cut down on things that you don't want to cut down on, or you're struggling to come up with ideas and don't know what else to write. Or maybe outside of this specific project that you're working on, you have too many other things going on that are distracting, or you don't have enough going on. And so all of your focus is going into this project and making it feel even more overwhelming. And even within the scope of the project itself, you might feel like there are so many things you have to do, so much research, so many committee meetings, so many different aspects of it that have to come together that can again contribute to a sense of anxiety or writer's block and make it feel really difficult to push through. And then lastly, of course, approaching deadlines. That pressure can be tough for a lot of people, especially again, if you have all of these expectations or other people have these expectations for what the quality of the work needs to be at a certain point, or that you need to produce X amount at a certain point, and that alone can make you kind of freeze up and not necessarily know what to do. So we're going to take a few minutes and have you just think about your current writer's block. Assuming that you either are now or at some point have been stuck or have writer's block, we're just going to take maybe 2 minutes to think about when or how you got stuck. So if you want to kind of do a little bit of a free write and just take some notes to think about it, to have a visual for yourself, or if you just want to do it in your own head, just try to think of these questions for, again, maybe 2 minutes. So maybe at 10:47, we'll come back. But reflect for now on these thoughts of why you get stuck. What are some feelings or reactions you have when you get stuck? At what points in your writing or at what times do you get stuck? And how do you get stuck? Because if you can identify these things at least, then that can help you start to figure out how you can apply strategies to combat them. So again, take about 2 minutes, just start thinking about this, write it down if that's helpful. Okay, so Helen Sword did a study where she examined 1,323 academic staff, PhD students, and postdoc researchers in 15 countries to learn how they write. And what she found is that writing is neither a daily routine nor a rare occurrence, neither an immovable constant nor a random event. The secret to academic success lies in a complex cluster of attributes and attitudes that she calls their writing base. So, behavioral habits of discipline and persistence, artisanal habits of craftsmanship and pride, social habits of collegiality and collaboration, and emotional habits of positivity and resilience. So even though most of the strategies listed in this presentation are not divided up by the base categories, we're still going to start with the behavioral habits because those are the traits that we have the most control over. So I'm going to give you another few moments just to write to, or just think about even each of the following questions to reflect on your writing habits, kind of thinking about maybe any sort of things you thought about or wrote about with those previous questions, and seeing if maybe your responses to any of these questions might have influenced any sort of writer's block that you might be feeling. So again, I'll just give you maybe a minute or so just to get thinking about these a little bit. Okay, and then here are just some other last questions to think about. So again, becoming more aware of your own writing process can maybe help you get a better sense of what specific needs you have when writing and how you get stuck. And so if you start to think about what works best for you and what you like, you can maybe take more active steps to be more aware of that and implement more of that in your process. But again, I'll give you maybe just another quick 30 seconds to look at these, start thinking about them. Again, write them down if you would like to. Okay, so hopefully you thought a little bit about that, got a little bit more of a sense of your own writing process and your own kind of needs. So now, since the rest of this workshop is going to cover strategies that can help you set maybe the sense of perfectionism that you have experienced or any sort of writer's block that you're thinking about aside, you can start to integrate them with your writing process or figure out how you can apply these strategies we're going to talk about into your writing process to move your writing forward. So, with that being said, let's talk through some strategies that can help you combat that writer's block. You might use some of these strategies a lot, or you might not use them at all, or you might use them very occasionally. But basically, the goal is to kind of create a little bit of a toolbox for yourself that you can apply these different strategies to different parts of your writing process, or when you're in a certain situation, you can try these things that can hopefully get you out of a rut. So the first of these strategies is for getting started when you're stuck or when you've stopped and need to reorient, and that's to take notes. So writing does not begin when you title a file, when you open a Word document or title that Word document or that file thesis or dissertation or article. Writing can take so many forms, and getting anything down on paper is useful. So just start with taking notes on what you've read, what you think or know, what your hypothesis and plans are. Just get anything down so that you've got something to work with. You can also think in terms of drafts. So you are going to revise no matter what. So you have to have something to revise. So just get that first draft started, which means you don't have to start at the beginning and you can even write in pieces. Just start with anything that you know, and over time you can flesh that all out. You can also break large tasks into smaller ones. So, for instance, when you're sitting down to write and maybe you're working on your literature review, you don't have to think about it as I'm sitting down to write my literature review. You can think about it instead as taking notes on what's significant in one source or about one issue, because breaking it down into a task like that, rather than thinking about it as I'm sitting down to write my full literature review, can make it seem a lot more manageable and something that is way easier to cross off of your to do list once it's finished. So, finding actions that are achievable help you feel like you are making progress and keep you invested. You can also make outlines or lists because overall, trying to keep a running, tab in your head of everything that you need to remember, or everything that you need to do, or everything that needs to be included in a particular section can be really overwhelming and can make it feel a lot bigger than it is. So if you can just make a visual and get it all down and get it out of your head, maybe you can make it as formal or informal as you like. That can just make things a little bit more visible and get you a much clearer sense of what you actually have to do. And that can also help you see how ideas connect, how you can organize things, and just get a better sense of what you're working with so that you're not just leaving it all up in your head or maybe just pushing things away to try to focus on what you've got in front of you. You can also just start with where you have ideas, kind of similar to taking notes. Just start with what you know. It doesn't matter if you write in complete sentences or if you write in full paragraphs or if you just write little phrases. Just writing something or anything to get you started can be really helpful. There's no rule saying that for writing you have to start at the beginning and work to the end. You can just pick whatever seems easiest to get you going. A lot of times I will tell a lot of writers who come into the writing center or just a lot of other students that I've worked with that you don't have to start with the title and the introduction paragraph and then the thesis and then the body paragraphs, etc. Because I think that's how a lot of students are taught to write. That's really not effective, but they feel like if they don't write that way, then it's bad or it's incorrect. It's not going to be good. It's not the case at all. And a lot of times how I write is I will pull up the notes app on my computer. So it doesn't have a page count. It doesn't have a word count. I have zero sense of how much writing I've actually done between just like the chunks on the page. But for me, that lack of visual or that lack of constant awareness of how many words I've done or how many pages I'm at is really helpful for making me feel like I can just write anything right now and it doesn't matter because I'm going to go in and fix it and edit it and it's going to be fine. This isn't the final paper, you know? So just even changing the visual or what program you write in can be super helpful and make it a lot easier for you to feel comfortable generating ideas. So you can also speed write if you tend to be a competitive person, or maybe you have a really short amount of time, like you've just got 5 minutes before class, or even if you just need an energy boost, you can set a short time limit and just write and not stop writing, or type and not stop typing. You could even set a word length goal. So you want to write 500 words in 5 minutes. That can give you a jolt of energy to keep going and turn off that internal editor that so many of us might have when we're writing, where we're constantly second guessing our word choice or our sentence structure, etc. Because your only goal for this is just to keep going and get to that word count that you set for yourself within X amount of minutes. So if you do something like speed write, you probably won't write complete sentences and you might jump from one idea to another. And it's probably not going to be good, but it will give you something to work with and some ideas that are down on the page that you can build from. So you can do this multiple times, pull out what's good from each thing, and then set a timer to kind of collectively build from that piece. You can also free write, which is sort of similar in terms of you're just writing without stopping. But basically, you set a particular issue or question and write about it. You don't stop writing, just write as fast as you think. And here too, you're not supposed to worry about writing complete sentences. You're not supposed to worry about producing your best writing or editing as you go. The result will probably be a little bit cleaner than the speed writing results, but you can still plan to polish it later and just focus on the ideas. So, like speed writing, you can do this multiple times, free writing just on one issue, and then free writing on a separate issue, and then figuring out the best parts of each and how you can combine those. So, can be helpful because sometimes all the thoughts in your head that are going around and causing writer's block can be related to something else that's stressing you out or frustrating you, not even the writing. So you can even just rewrite about that and what's going on that way. And so that can help clear your head a little bit and leave more room for the writing, more room for you to kind of set that aside and focus and get it out of your head and see that it's a visual and that you can think about it later. You can also turn off editing tools. So kind of like what I was saying about how I like to write where I can't see the page count and I can't see the word count. You can turn off things like that as you write so that you're not facing that constant kind of awareness of where you're at and that constant pressure. And so that you're not letting yourself get caught up in where you're at. It can be so much easier just to focus and dump ideas down and sift through all that later without having those kind of external reminders. And lastly, you can explain it to someone else. So maybe you're having difficulty making an idea come across clearly, or you have a bunch of ideas and you're trying to figure out how they connect. Regardless, even just the act of verbalizing your thoughts or trying to orally explain it to somebody in a way that makes sense can bring up a lot of things or make you explain it in a way that's so much clearer than when you are just staring at the screen and the words. And then you also have that other outside perspective helping you and giving some thoughts as to where things make sense or asking you questions as to where you could add things or talk a little bit more. Basically, you're just getting an audience to talk to you about your writing so that you're able to see it from a different perspective. So now we're going to give you some time and some practice to do some activities using these strategies and see how some of them feel. So first, you can take some notes about what you're currently working on. So maybe that is a PhD dissertation, maybe that is a master's thesis, maybe it's something else entirely. But take some notes about what you're working on or what you plan to work on next and be really specific. So don't just write thesis or methodology section of my thesis or dissertation, but think about a smaller task within that. So for example, synthesizing sources on topic B for the literature review, or describing the research participants in the methods section. So first, you're just going to take 1 minute and write to that. Okay, so there's going to be 2 prompts on the next slide, but I have the guidelines for how I want you to write to those 2 prompts here, just so that I can keep those prompts up on the screen for you to reference. So basically, for this next activity, you're going to take 3 minutes and to the prompts, which I will show you, one of the two that you'll choose. You're just going to write as much as you can and you're going to try not to stop. So this is basically going to be like free writing. You're going to do your best to, again, turn off that internal editor. Don't get caught up in it correcting any grammatical errors or anything that doesn't make sense. Just try to write as much as you can without stopping. Whatever thoughts are coming to you about this specific task that you just wrote about, take 3 minutes and write to them. So basically, pick one of these two prompts that for the next 3 minutes, you are going to do that writing without stopping, writing without editing about. So you can either pick that current or next task on your list that you just identified and write everything you know about that topic, or you can write about your next step for writing about that topic. So what is the thing you're going to do when you next sit down to work on that specific task? So I will start those 3 minutes right about now. So we'll come back at 11:06, but spend those 3 minutes free writing to one of these two prompts. Okay, so hopefully writing for those 3 minutes, trying not to stop, trying not to edit, trying not to get caught up in anything that you were writing about helped you get a little bit better of a sense of where you can start or the next steps that you can take. Maybe you feel like you have more of an idea of what you can get done, or you know where to start now, or what the next thing you can do is, and a little bit more of a sense of how to do it. Or at the very least, maybe you just have something on paper to start working with and cut out, even if it makes no sense to you right now. You still put something down on paper. You still spent some sort of time generating some sort of ideas that you can do something with. So now we're going to overview just some more general strategies that once you've started to get that writing down, some ways that you can keep being able to write and keep preventing that writer's block from setting in. So the first thing is to just track your time. So be aware of how much time can get sucked up by just taking even a few minutes to go on your phone or answer text messages, etc. You can try to just eliminate those distractions. And so handwriting or doing something by hand where you're not, super easily able to click to different tabs or check different things really quickly can help you get in that zone and dedicate as much time as you can to actually writing without getting super distracted. You can also identify what the most productive times of day for you to write are. So maybe when you first wake up and you're not fully awake yet, it's way easier for you to get in that zone and focus just on the writing. Or maybe it's towards the end of the day once you're done with work or all other things, and that's the only thing you have to focus on. Or maybe it's a completely other time of day. But basically, if you can identify when you are most productive or when you like to write the most, set time aside during that portion of the day and write. Just be careful not to, let your day get wasted away with that strategy or get too caught up working with this. Just pay attention to when you're at your best, because that's when you can obviously produce the most and hopefully the best work. So the next strategy is to carve out writing time. Obviously, this kind of goes hand in hand with identifying productive times of the day. If you're aware of where or what environments or what setting works best for you, then schedule writing time in. Maybe you are like me and you only really like to schedule things if they're like really specific meetings or specific things you have to do. So it can feel weird to like put in a Google Calendar or something writing time, but that can help you hold yourself a little bit more accountable and can help you structure time around writing to make sure that you're actually doing it, and can just help with that mentality of I'm sitting down and I'm doing this right now. You can also chunk your writing. So you can write in small bits and maybe focus on individual questions or topics or results and think, I'm not going to focus on the transitions or organizing or polishing until later, because it can be really overwhelming, like we talked a little bit about earlier, to sit down and think, I'm going to write my dissertation today, or I'm going to write my lit review today. It's much more manageable to say that you'll write up to 2 results or respond to 2 of your research questions in your conclusion in that specific time that you set down for yourself. Because then, again, you're breaking it down into a manageable task and working just with that, and that can make it really easy. Also, set regular goals for yourself. If you go in just thinking, I'm going to write my dissertation, that again can make it really hard to focus, can build up a lot of stress. And so, giving yourself specific goals that you want to achieve, like maybe it is a word count or a page count, or maybe it's a certain amount of hours, whatever it takes or feels for you to see that progress, set that, because that can make it way more tangible than just kind of abstractly thinking, I'm going to sit down and work on this today. And also just reward yourself for reaching goals. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to do that. And really, you're the only one who's going to reward yourself for it. So whether it's just allowing yourself a little treat that you thought after writing a certain amount of pages, or going for a walk after a certain amount of hours of writing, or sitting down and watching TV after you submitted a chapter to advisor, reward yourself for that work. Help keep that work-life balance, and know that you accomplished a goal and you did something really hard. So we can talk about some more strategies for making time to write, which include finding places that offer you a focused environment. So maybe it's one with limited distractions, like the library workrooms, or there's a computer lab at the writing center. You can also eat and stay hydrated. That's very important. And you can build that into your schedule as well, because like we talked about earlier, not eating or not staying hydrated or not exercising or not sleeping can make it really hard to focus and really hard to put in that necessary energy into your writing. Also find productive habits. So maybe think about your responses to those first questions we posed about your writing process, when you like to write, what environment you like to be in when you write best, and make sure or do your best at least to establish those conditions for your writing. What is the most productive for you? What do you like the most? What makes you feel the most motivated? What makes you feel the best? Take active steps to incorporate those into these chunks of time that you set aside to write, because if you know that's how you work best, then regularly incorporating that can help you keep writing your best and can help keep pushing off that writer's block. You can also switch things up. So it can be really easy to fall into maybe feelings of guilt if you're doing something besides writing, or you're working on another project and you know you need to work on this one. But ultimately, if you are getting stuck, just switch to doing something else for a little bit. So have smaller tasks at hand that you can do, so you can jump to a different task or use a different part of your brain, but still be making progress on that project, so that you don't get sucked into working on one specific thing, but feeling stuck and then not entirely knowing what else to do. You can also switch your writing time, your location, or technology, but basically just spicing it up a little bit so that you're not kind of getting stuck and then staying stuck and not doing anything else to get your mind working in a different way. Also, taking breaks, getting up, walking away from the notebook, walking away from the computer screen, stretching, going for a walk, going to the gym, giving that part of your mind that is working really hard when you're writing and researching and thinking and doing things a break helps you come back refreshed the next time that you do it. And also just release frustration, which can be as simple as doing something you've been putting off, like laundry or dishes or going to the gym. And once you're able to check that thing off, you can stop thinking about the fact that you need to do it. And it can make it much easier to come back to your writing task and focus just on that, when you don't have these other things in your head that you're also thinking about that you need to do. So just some last kind of general tips. Maybe you want to go back to your writing habits list from earlier and think about what you can adjust, and do more or less of, or how you can incorporate different strategies into there to figure out how any of those can alleviate the writer's block. So whether that is incorporating times to vocalize your thoughts or express your thoughts to others, just taking those breaks, giving yourself those rewards and giving yourself that credit. Being aware of the fact that nobody's first few drafts are good. So setting that time aside to free write or speed write, or just get anything down on the page that you can work and revise and edit and polish later. And also just know that you are not your writing, just like you're not a grade, just like you're not any sort of number value assigned to any of your writing. You are not your writing, and you are so much more than it. And so take that pressure off of yourself and know that, again, you are still learning, you are still working, but you're here for a reason and you do have skills. And of course, just listen and revise. Everybody that you're working with is there to help you and wants to help you. So take advantage of those tools and those opportunities and those people that are there to support you. So these are just some helpful texts about writing. I'll skip through this slide really quick since you can just check it out later. But the last main things I'll touch on is that you have a lot of resources at UNLV that are here to support you, such as things like this workshop, But also you have committees and advisors and mentors who are there to help you, people in the field who have been where you're at and know what you're going through and know what you're thinking. You can attend workshops like this one. You can make appointments with career services or your academic advisor. You can even come to the writing center. You don't have to have anything written to come. We'll just talk with you about it and ask you questions and just give you a different perspective on it. And you can also just use all of the different online resources about things like writer's block and writing that other people have talked about and are giving advice on. So with that being said, the Writing Center is here to help you. We do work with a lot of grad students. We even work with faculty. Almost all of our staff are grad students, so they know exactly what you're going through and can really help you with that. So you can visit our website, unlv.edu/writing-center to get more information about us, learn how to schedule an appointment, whether we have in-person, virtual, or asynchronous ones. You can also find handouts for a bunch of different things. You can see a list of our workshops and a schedule of when those are, our hours and location, staff bios, so you can get to know the grad students that work there, and a bunch of other additional resources and information. And we also have a YouTube channel where we upload a lot of workshops and things. And then, of course, we have social media like Instagram and Facebook that give you more writing tips and advice and also just general information about the Writing Center. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for having me here and letting me present.
Can you take a quick question for us?
I just wondered what the turnaround is on online owls, like if you submit something to them.
Yes, so it's 24 to 48 hours. The owl is open Sunday through Friday. So it just depends on how many we get and how many available consultants there are to take it as to when you'll get it back, but it's usually 24, 48-hour turnaround time. So that's easier if you have obviously not a pressing deadline where you need to get immediate feedback.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are there any other questions or anything?
Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if I can make a schedule with UNLV Writing Center so we can make together my weekly goals for my writing, and then next week I can come back. And also I think it's gonna help me to track my progress.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's a great way to use the Writing Center even. You can visit the website and see like when appointments are available. But yeah, if you go in and just tell the person you're working with too, I want to set these specific goals for myself and I want to come back in a week, they are more than happy to help you do that. And that is a really great way to use it. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Maddie. Would you mind sending me the slides so I can add them to our Canvas course?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. This was great, and have a great rest of your day.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.